Alrighty, what's up guys? We're in the garage today and just want to make a video going over TRT and my experience with being on TRT. It's been a little over a year now, and I hear a lot of misconceptions and fears and worries and myths that I kind of want to address, as well as going over my own experience with it and what it's been like for me. Before I get into any of this, I just want to make it clear, I'm not a doctor, I'm not an expert, I'm not a medical professional whatsoever. I am a plumber. So take what I'm saying with a grain of salt, do your own research, but I have been really thorough over the year with my blood work and my health markers, and I've kept pretty good tabs on everything, and so yeah, I feel like I'm somewhat well qualified to talk about this, so I'm going to just jump right into it here. I'm going to start out with kind of just general background. The reason why I got on TRT was I just kind of felt like off, which is usually how it starts for most people. I was tired all the time. I had really low sex drive. Progress in the gym is usually something that tips people off, and it wasn't like I was making progress, but all of my friends were like making progress way faster than I was, and they weren't doing really anything that much differently than I was. And so I kind of felt like something was off. But the biggest thing for me was when I got checked, I was 22, about to turn 23, and my sex drive was just horrible. And I was like, this makes zero sense. I'm 22, 23 years old. Like, I should not be feeling like this. And so I didn't really know where to go. So I just started calling testosterone clinics, and I was like, hey, I want to get my blood work done and see what my levels are. And so that's what I did. I went to a local TRT clinic. They drew my blood. Now, this is one thing that I would have changed had I known back then. TRT clinics, most of them don't really care that much about you, and I'm going to get into that later. But if you're testing your testosterone, you should be doing it in the morning. That's when your levels are going to be the highest. And of course, the TRT clinic wants to sell you TRT, so they don't care when you come and get your blood work done. So I went in and I got my blood work done at like 5:30 p.m., like after work. Now, realistically, the fluctuation in your TRT levels, like throughout the day, are probably going to be around like 30%. And so whatever you are in the evening, you're probably going to be like 30% higher in the morning, roughly. And so I went in, I got my levels checked, and my total testosterone number was 219. Now, the clinical average range is 300 to 1,000. Now, in my opinion, that's kind of BS. Because most guys are still going to feel pretty symptomatic even in the 300s. Really, I mean, if you want to feel at your best, I mean, you want to be like probably no less than like 500. And so they said, hey, if you're under 400, then you qualify for TRT. And so I got hooked up with them, and that's kind of how I got started. Now, the things that I noticed right off the bat was mentally, I felt so much better. Like, brain fog was gone. I had way more energy. At the time that I had got on it, we had just started building my house. And I would work like a full 8 to 10 hour day at my normal job, and then I would come home and I'd work on my house. And I like never got tired. I like couldn't believe it. I always had energy to work. And that was like probably the most profound difference that was made in the beginning. Obviously my sex drive was a lot better. My mood was better. Like even my wife was like, you just seem like so much more upbeat and happy and energized. And so that's definitely something, if you're low, that you can expect to feel. I started sleeping a lot better, which I didn't have sleep problems to begin with, but I definitely slept better, no question about it. I felt like I was more rested when I was sleeping, and I felt like I was sleeping deeper. And so yeah, it made a really profound difference pretty quickly. Now, I powerlift, and so getting into kind of like powerlifting, how that affected my powerlifting. Before I started TRT, my best natural lifts was I squatted 470 pounds, I bench pressed 315 pounds, and I deadlifted 530 pounds. And within only about 3 months, no change in my body weight. It was the same body weight. After about 3 to 4 months, I squatted 500 pounds, I benched 355 pounds, and I deadlifted 550 pounds. So immediately, strength went up pretty freaking fast. And part of that is definitely muscle gain, but another part of that is definitely going to be increased water retention, and I'll get into that in a minute too. But when you get on testosterone, your body wants to play a balancing act with testosterone and estrogen. And so when I forgot to mention, my total testosterone when it was low at 219, my estrogen was at 14. Now the clinical average range for estrogen, I'm going to go back and look at my Bloodwork panel here, but usually it's like they kind of want you to be no more than like 45, and you definitely don't want to be into the single digits. They want you a little bit closer to like 20 to 45, I would say, is ideal. And I was at 14, so my estrogen was low, but my test was low. And a side effect to estrogen is you begin to retain more water. And I noticed this especially because we got bridal photos taken, my wife and I, about 4 weeks into me being on TRT, and I noticed all of a sudden I just felt like I looked like a lot fatter. And I was like, what the heck is going on? Like, I felt fat. And I kind of started to feel like the positive effects that I first felt kind of started to go away. And I started feeling kind of crappy again. And when I got my blood work done, after my first 4 weeks, my estrogen was like up into like the mid 60s. And that's a side effect that you can get, is when you are higher in testosterone, your estrogen is going to come up with it. And if your estrogen is too high, it's kind of going to negate some of the positive effects that you would get from testosterone. You're going to get bloated, you're going to retain a lot of water, you're going to feel crappy, you're going to feel moody. That's where the idea of like gyno comes in, like men growing boobs when they take steroids. That's what they're talking about, is your estrogen coming up. Now, I didn't experience any like nipple sensitivity or anything like that. I felt a lot more moody, and my water retention was really bad. So I'm gonna look at my notes here, but that kind of leads me into, I wanna talk about going to like a clinic versus a more hands-off, like self-administered approach. So when I was going to my clinic, I mentioned earlier, clinics really don't care about you, at least the one I went to, and a lot of them. Now, this was the type of clinic where I had to actually drive to the clinic, and they would give me my injections, and they were the ones that were monitoring my blood work. And when my estrogen was elevated, they were giving me 1 shot a week, and I was on 150 milligrams a week. And so I would go in once a week, and they would inject 150 milligrams of testosterone, and then I'd come back next week, 7 days later. And one thing that when they noticed my estrogen was elevated, they just put me on a AI, anastrozole is what it's called, or Arimidex. There's a lot of different AIs out there. And what that does is that blocks some of the aromatization that comes from testosterone to keep your estrogen levels down. Now, knowing what I know now, I probably didn't need to be taking an AI. But like I said, they don't really care about helping you fine-tune stuff. I found out later that you'd be better off injecting your testosterone twice a week. So that 150 milligrams, it would be better to actually do 75 on Monday and 75 on Thursday. And what that can do is decrease your aromatization, and so you might not even need an AI. Now, no one ever even told me that. No one even suggested that. I had to figure that out on my own. And then the more I looked into it, the more I realized that you want those injections as frequent as possible to keep your levels as steady as possible, because the less often you're injecting, the more peaks and valleys you're going to get in your hormones. Now, they make different esters of testosterone, and I'm not going to get super deep into that, but they have some that have a half-life of 6 to 7 days, and some have a half-life of 3 to 4 days, and some have a half-life of maybe 1 to 2 days. And so people will say, well, I use the enanthate version of testosterone, and so I don't need it more frequently. But I'm going to disagree pretty hard on that. I think that if you are on TRT, you should be injecting every single day. But I'll get more into that later as well. So with this clinic, the other thing I noticed with them is they didn't check anything but my testosterone and my estrogen. They weren't checking any other blood markers. They weren't looking at my cholesterol. They weren't looking at my red blood cell count or my liver enzymes or anything. All they cared about was my testosterone and estrogen, because that they don't care, and it costs them more money to draw more labs, and I didn't know that. And so I kind of started asking them questions like, hey, I've read some things online that this is a side effect I could be dealing with. Can I get that checked on my next blood panel? And they would kind of reluctantly say yes, but you could tell that they were bothered by it and they didn't really want to check anything else. And that really bothered me. And so finally, I ended up getting connected with a guy. His name's Brad. Shout out to Brad if you're watching this. And he owns a company called Vitality HRT. Now, he didn't tell me to say any of this. This is just my own experience. And what he does is he ships you the supplies to your house, or his company does. They send you the testosterone, the syringes, everything you need, and it's on you. You inject it. You're the one that's doing everything. And the reason why I like that so much better is, one, I have more say in how I administer to myself. Like I mentioned, I prefer to inject it every day. And not only that, Brad actually cares about you and actually cares about your health and actually monitors the things that need to be monitored. Brad himself is a competitive bodybuilder. He's extremely knowledgeable on this stuff, and he knows what he's talking about, where most TRT clinics don't really know what they're talking about. And so when I switched over to him, it was dramatically better, and he actually offered advice on, hey, start trying this, start trying that. I noticed that your blood work looks like this. Why don't you give this a try? That's what a TRT clinic should look like. And so if your clinic is not treating you that way, you need to go somewhere else. Not to mention, the original clinic that I was going to was charging me double the price for about half the service that Vitality offers. And now, like I said, it's definitely, I would recommend hitting up Brad and Vitality HRT. Doesn't have to be them, but it should be somebody that actually cares about your health. Now, just going over general blood work. So I have this on my phone. I kind of want to start going over my baseline. So when I started, like I said, my testosterone was at 219, my estrogen was at 14.9. Couple other things I want to go over. PSA, that's your prostate, I was at 0.6. My liver enzymes, ALT was 29, AST was 27. Pretty normal. My cholesterol, my total cholesterol was 168. My triglycerides were 139. My HDL 41, LDL 102. My A1C was elevated. My hematocrit, I'm going to get into this stuff later, was at a 48. And that's kind of the main things that I want to talk about. Now, fast forward to the last panel I just got, which was at the end of March. Dramatic improvements, and I'm going to talk about that. My PSA stayed the same, prostate stayed the same, 0.6. My estrogen was at 48.5. My total testosterone was at 1300, so I went from 219 to 1300. My liver enzymes were a little higher. I'll talk about that later. AST 42, ALT 37. HDL was 39, basically unchanged. My cholesterol total was 138. My triglycerides were 58, and my LDL was 90. My hematocrit went from 48. Right now it's at 53.7. And so before I get into a lot of that stuff, I want to talk about some common misconceptions. The first one I mentioned, I kind of hit on, was prostate. I have heard a lot of people tell me that I'm going to be at higher risk for prostate cancer because I'm using testosterone. That is not true. That's not true at all. You are not going to be at higher risk for prostate cancer if you take testosterone, especially if you're taking a medically prescribed dose. As you can see, my prostate did not change over the course of 1 year of taking testosterone. It was 0.6 on day 1, and it was 0.6 last month. And so my prostate was unchanged. I have never met a single person whose prostate changed at all from taking TRT. So if people start telling you that, it's not true. You don't need to worry about it. Another myth that I hear a lot is if you get on testosterone, you're going to go infertile. That's also not true, and I'm going to get into that in a minute. If you get on testosterone, you have to stay on it for the rest of your life. You can never come off. Also not true, but I will say you're probably not going to want to come off. You're probably never going to have a reason to come off. And so, yeah, you probably will be on it forever, but it's not going to be out of necessity. It's just going to be because you want to. I mean, why would I ever want to go back to being low testosterone? It makes no sense, right? I mean, this is a medication. It's designed to improve the quality of my life. If you were taking a men's multivitamin and it was improving the quality of your life, why would you stop taking it, right? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. If you really want to go back to your baseline, you can, and you will. You're not going to be shut down forever. You're going to be fine. But why would you? Why would you want to? It just doesn't make sense. Now, I want to get into estrogen management, and I promise I'm going to circle back on a lot of these things. But the first thing I want to start with is estrogen management. As I mentioned before, my clinic wanted to put me on an AI, aromatase inhibitor. Like I said, that blocks the testosterone from converting to estrogen. Now, if you are a person that gets on TRT and you're having estrogen issues, there's some really simple fixes for this before you get on an AI. And an AI isn't necessarily bad, but it's probably not necessary. The first thing we would want to look at is your injection frequency. Like I said, if you get a huge spike of testosterone, you're going to get a huge spike of estrogen as well. The more frequently you're dosing, the more likely you're going to have stable estrogen and testosterone levels. That's going to be the first thing, is start injecting more frequently. 1 time a week is dumb. 2 times a week is a little better, but even that's dumb. I think minimum you should be 3 times a week, but I do 7 days a week. Every single day I inject my testosterone. And that's because I don't want any peaks and valleys. I want my hormones the same all the time. Your body naturally produces testosterone on a 24-hour cycle, so why would you not keep it the same when you're injecting testosterone? I inject it in the morning. That's when your levels are the highest. They slowly come down as the day winds down, and then in the morning, I inject it again. That is what your body already naturally does, so there's no reason to do this twice a week or 1 time a week bullcrap. 3 times a week minimum, but if you want to do it right, it should be every day. And that's going to really help your estrogen. If you're still having estrogen issues, the next thing I would tell you to look at is your body fat percentage. Now, the more body fat that you have, the more likely your testosterone is going to convert into estrogen. So if you're really fat, you probably need to lose weight, and you probably knew you needed to lose weight before you got on TRT. Now, in the meantime, while you're losing the fat, sure, take an AI so that you can feel good, but the higher body fat you are, the more side effects you're going to get from testosterone. It's just the way it is, and that goes for all anabolics, all anabolic steroids. You cannot be fat when you're taking these drugs. It's going to worsen your side effects big time, especially estrogen. If you're still having estrogen issues and those things are in check, look at your stress levels, how well are you sleeping, things like that can also affect estrogen. But I'm willing to bet that if you are injecting very frequently, 7 days a week, and you are not fat, you are probably not going to have estrogen issues. Now, on the flip side, you don't want your estrogen too low, because estrogen plays a huge role in also with your sex drive. In addition to that, it protects your hair, it protects your joints, it is very protective of your health, and so you do not want estrogen to be low either. Now, everybody's sweet spot for estrogen is going to be different, but you do not want your estrogen to be low, and you don't want it to be sky high either. You want to find a good middle ground. For me, it's probably 30 to 50. Anything below 30 is not good for me, and anything below or above 50, I just start to get too moody, and I don't feel very good. So I try and stay between 30 and 50 with my estrogen, which is pretty easy to do. The next thing I want to talk about is cholesterol management. Specifically, I want to talk about ApoB. Now, when I got my baseline blood work, they didn't check ApoB, because why would they? They probably didn't even know. ApoB is the most superior cholesterol marker there is. ApoB is the actual number of how much bad cholesterol you have. HDL and LDL are kind of important, but ApoB is actually telling the story. Now, you want ApoB to be as low as possible. And so if you eat like crap and you take testosterone or any other anabolic steroid, all steroids, including testosterone, have effects on your cholesterol. A mild TRT dose of testosterone might not have a super profound effect on your cholesterol, but it still affects it. And so you need to be eating healthy. I mean, this is basic stuff. I mean, you should already be eating healthy, but pay attention to your ApoB. Now, some things that I've done to help my cholesterol, I have kind of low HDL, high dose fish oil. I take 4 grams of fish oil a day. In addition to that, I take citrus bergamot, 1,200 milligrams a day, and those are drastically going to improve your cholesterol markers. You probably also should be doing cardio, even just like a 20-minute walk a day, and please just don't eat terrible. Eat good food. Eat your good monounsaturated fats, olive oil, lean meats. I mean, this is pretty basic stuff, but cholesterol is important, and ApoB is the number that you should be paying extra close attention to. Mine was at 70, which is pretty good. But like I said, you want it to be as low as possible. Next, hematocrit and red blood cell count. When you take testosterone, your red blood cell count is going to increase because the amount of oxygen that goes into your blood increases, which is a good thing. You might have heard of guys like cyclists that do blood doping so they can increase their red blood cell count, so they can get more oxygen in their blood, so they can have more endurance. Testosterone is going to do this, but there is a negative aspect to it, which is your hematocrit. Your hematocrit is the viscosity of your blood. It's how thick your blood is. Your blood is going to get thicker when you are on testosterone. Like I mentioned earlier, my baseline hematocrit level was 48, and now I'm at 53.7. So my blood is considerably thicker now. Now, some things that you can do to mitigate this is you need to stay hydrated. That is the number one thing. If you have elevated hematocrit, it's probably because when you go in to get your blood work done, you're not hydrated. You should be hydrating before you get your blood work done. That's going to help your hematocrit probably more than anything will. In addition to that, high dose fish oil, that's going to help your hematocrit. Nattokinase is another supplement that you should probably be taking for elevated hematocrit. That's going to help your blood flow. There's also, if you're really bad, there's a supplement out there called Hemaflow. That is really beneficial for your hematocrit as well. But the biggest things you need to be doing is you need to be hydrating every single day. You need to be doing cardio every single day. And you need to be checking your blood pressure. This is basic stuff. You can get a blood pressure cuff for like $30 at your grocery store. If your hematocrit is a little high and your blood pressure is not high, you're probably okay. But I like to be picky about my health. You should be too. If you are experiencing elevated hematocrit, that means your blood is thick and your heart is working a lot harder to pump that blood. And so make sure you're staying hydrated, make sure you're taking the supplements you need to, make sure you're watching your blood pressure, and make sure that you're doing cardio. Those are going to be the main things that help your hematocrit. Another thing that helped me with my hematocrit as well is I cut back on red meat. If you have a really high iron diet, I've noticed that elevates my hematocrit pretty badly. So I used to eat ground beef every single day. I've cut that back to like once or twice a week, and I eat more like chicken and stuff like that, white meat. That helped me a lot too. Now, the next thing I want to get into is fertility. Now, a lot of people are scared that when they get on TRT, they're going to go infertile. This is only true if you're not using HCG. If your clinic is not talking to you about HCG, then you need to find a new clinic. Now, I'm 20, I got on when I was 22, 23 years old. Fertility is a big deal to me because I want to have kids. HCG is probably going to be one of the most important things that you can take to protect your fertility. Now, what HCG does is it stimulates to your pituitary gland in your brain to tell your testes to continue producing testosterone. The simplest way to think of this is it's telling your brain to keep your testicles turned on. Now that's important. One, if you ever want to come off testosterone, that's what's going to protect your natural production. And two, that is what is going to help your fertility. Now, if you're still having fertility issues and HCG alone isn't cutting it, there are plenty of other options out there. You can take HMG, which is similar to HCG, but it stimulates your sperm production specifically. But I wanted to go over, when I started TRT, I got my sperm tested. And my total sperm count was 275 million. Now they consider you low fertility if you're like under 40 million, I think is the cutoff. And so in the beginning, I was on 150 tests a week and I was on 250 IU of HCG a week. Now that's probably too low. A couple months after I started this, I retested my sperm, and my count had dropped from 275 million to 65 million. And so that's a pretty considerable decrease, but I'm still well above the fertile range. I didn't experience any changes in my motility, so they still swam fine. I didn't get any changes in my sperm quality, just in my total sperm count. After I saw that, I increased my HCG dose from 250 IU a week to 500 IU a week. 500 IU a week is probably the minimum you should be taking. Some guys like taking closer to 1,000. That's up to you. Fertility can pretty easily be restored even if you are low. And so 500 a week is probably fine. And then if you need to ramp it up when you're trying for a baby, you can do that. But while I've been on TRT, my wife has been pregnant twice. One of those pregnancies resulted in a miscarriage, which is not TRT's fault. And now she's 34 weeks pregnant, and we're going to be having a boy soon. And so don't let people tell you that you're going to go infertile on TRT. And also, don't let people tell you that you're less likely to have a boy if you're on TRT, because we're having a boy and I was using TRT the entire time. It doesn't matter. Whatever God wants to bless you with, that's what you're getting. And so don't let people tell you you're going to go infertile on TRT. It's not true, but you do need to be taking HCG. And if you're like me, you should probably just get your sperm tested anyway and make sure. And if you're really nervous, freeze your sperm now. It's not very expensive. It's not very hard. Just freeze your sperm. And then that way you're covered just in case anything happens. Next, I want to go over dosing and frequency. I already went over testosterone dose frequency. It should be 7 days a week, minimum 3 times a week. Now what I do and what you should be doing is injecting your testosterone with insulin needles, not the big giant harpoon looking needles. And what you do, super simple, just backfill your insulin needle. Pull the plunger out, drip your testosterone into the syringe, and then put the plunger back in. And I rotate between 4 injection sites. I do my deltoids and I do my lats. And so I just go deltoid, deltoid, lat, lat, and then on the 5th day, I'm back to my deltoid. 7 days a week. That is the correct way to use your testosterone. Now HCG is a little bit different. HCG is going to be injected into your fat, not into your muscle. TRT should be injected intramuscular. If anybody tells you different, they're wrong. TRT is intramuscular, in the muscle. HCG is going to be injected into your fat. I just pinch a little bit of belly fat and I inject it that way. HCG is more effective when you have bigger doses. And so I do Monday, Thursday for my HCG, 250 each day. So 500 a week, 250 each day. If you're doing more than that, I know some guys use 500 4 times a week, and that's fine too. But yeah, you want to take a little bit bigger doses of HCG. It's not as effective when you microdose it. Now, next I want to go over some physique changes. As you can see in the thumbnail, I look pretty different. This is not directly caused by TRT. When I got my baseline blood work, I realized that I was not as healthy as I thought I was. In addition to that, I was also really fat. I mean, we're probably talking 30%. And so I decided that I was going to go on a cut shortly after starting TRT. When I started at 255 pounds, that was my starting point, 255. A year later, I now weigh 200 pounds. That's what I weighed this morning. So I've lost 55 pounds. This was not a result of TRT. Did TRT help? 100%. Is it going to help with muscle retention while you're in a deficit? Yes. But the weight loss was a direct cause of my diet changes. I ate significantly less food. That is the only way to lose weight. But TRT has been extremely helpful in a dieting phase because my libido stays high, even though I'm exhausted. It's easier to retain muscle, it's easier to train hard. Yes, it makes it easier, but you still have to put in the work and you still have to eat less food. And my reason for doing that was health. I didn't think I was healthy enough. I wanted to get healthier, and so I'm losing weight. I'm going to continue to lose weight. I want to get a six-pack. I want to be somewhat ripped, maybe around 12 to 13% body fat, so that's my goal. I'll get into that a little bit later. Now, next I kind of want to get into, there's a lot of guys out there that talk about TRT plus. Basically all that is a low-dose steroid cycle. Now, my thoughts on this, I actually currently am personally doing this, and there can be some benefits to it if it's well thought out. Everybody has their own idea on what the best steroid compounds are, what the best thing is to do, how you should do it, blah, blah, blah. But what I've noticed is I got tired of my hematocrit being high, and TRT is what's causing the elevation. And at 1300 testosterone, total testosterone, that's more than enough. I don't really need to be that high. And my estrogen, being at 48.5, is a little on the higher end, which means I'm retaining more water. But right now my goal from a physique standpoint is to be lean, and so I don't want to retain a lot of water. And so what I've decided to do is I've added in a compound called Masteron. Now, Masteron is a derivative of testosterone. All steroids are. And what it does is it helps bring the estrogen down a little bit, and it helps increase your androgen load, your total load of steroids that you're taking. And so obviously steroids build more muscle and all the good things. And it also is going to help bring my estrogen down a little bit. And in addition to this, because I'm taking less testosterone, my hematocrit is going to drop a little bit, and Masteron doesn't affect your red blood cell count. Some other reasons why I incorporated Masteron is because it's extremely safe, and there are libido benefits to it, which I don't necessarily need, but it is helpful because as I've been getting deeper and deeper into my caloric deficit, it's been harder and harder to maintain that, and so Masteron is a pretty good compound. And so that's what I'm currently doing. My current protocol is I'm taking about 115 milligrams of testosterone per week. I'm taking 140 milligrams of Masteron per week, injected daily. That's split into 7 doses, and I inject it daily. And so my total anabolic load went from just my regular TRT dose to now I'm about 255 milligrams per week total. And it's been going really well, and I really enjoy it. And so if that's something you want to play around with, be smart. Do not abuse anything. Do not abuse steroids. Do not abuse your health. You only get one body. Keep track of your blood work. Keep track of your blood pressure. Make sure you're hydrating. Make sure you're eating right. You don't really have a choice when you're messing with this stuff. You have to be on top of your health. You cannot just recreationally take drugs like this and expect to be fine. You have to be serious about what you're taking and what you're doing. Now, in addition to this, being that I'm on a cut, I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about peptides. Right now I'm using retatrutide. If you don't know what that is, just look into it, or maybe I'll make another video separately on that. But peptides I'm using. HCG is a peptide that I am using that helps protect my testicular function, and it helps protect my sperm count. I'm using retatrutide for fat loss. I am using glutathione for recovery and immune system benefits. I plan to use BPC 157 to help nagging tendon injury that I've been dealing with for a while. I plan to use a little bit of GHKCU for the increased collagen production. One side effect of Masteron is that you can get slightly less collagen production, so I'm going to counteract that with GHKCU. Do your own research on this stuff and decide what you think is the best decision for you, but that's what I'm currently doing. Now, to finish off, a really good question that somebody asked me was, did being on TRT meet my expectations? And him and I had a good conversation about this. When you start to use stuff like this, you subconsciously start to try harder. You start to train harder. You start to take your health more seriously. You start to take your diet more seriously, which you should, because you want to maximize the positive effects that you're getting from these compounds. But the question that we were talking about was how much of this positive strength increases and body composition changes and mood changes and all that, how much of this was actually from the testosterone itself, and how much of it was from me just trying harder. And honestly, I would say it's pretty fair mix of both. TRT made a big difference for me. And in the beginning, when I was taking my health less seriously and I wasn't eating as well and I wasn't training as hard and I wasn't taking things as seriously, it definitely helped me big time. But I think that what I've noticed is now that I take things more seriously, my diet, my hydration, my sleep, it has made a world of difference. And so was TRT what I expected? TRT by itself is probably not going to meet your expectations if you're the type of person that thinks that it's kind of like a magic pill. It's just going to make you pack on all this muscle and it's going to change your life. It will change your life, but it's not going to be astronomical. I mean, when you look at bodybuilders, they are not taking TRT. They're probably taking about 10 times a TRT dose. And so don't think you're just going to magically turn into a bodybuilder one day by taking TRT, because you won't. But did it meet my expectations? For the most part, yes. I got really strong. I mean, I put like 40 pounds on my bench in a couple of months, put like 30 pounds on my squat and like 20 pounds on my deadlift really quickly. And so, yeah, I think it did meet my expectations. But like I said, you know, you got to take stuff seriously. If you don't take your health seriously, if you're not trying hard, TRT is probably not going to benefit you like you think it will. Would I do it again, knowing what I know now? 100%. I probably would have started sooner. I love it. I think it's worth it. I think that every single human being on planet Earth, male and female, should be getting their hormones checked, should be doing their blood work. And if you're low, I am a huge advocate of TRT. I think it's worth it. I think anybody that's low should be doing it. And yeah, I would 100% do it again, no question. If you have the money for it, and if you're willing to put in the work and the time and take your health seriously, I think that you can make some pretty dramatic changes to your life. It's going to increase the quality of your life, especially, you know, with my son being born soon. I mean, life is going to get stressful, and to be able to just have my hormones optimized all the time through the sleepless nights and the stress and everything else, I mean, that's going to be a game changer for me. And so don't listen to stupid people, make your own decisions, do your own research. And yeah, I think TRT is worth it. I think if you're low, you should be on it. And that's all I got. So if you guys have any questions or thoughts, leave them in the comments down below. And that's going to be it for this one. So peace out.